Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. This is the place where we share powerful, real-life stories of betrayal, heartbreak, personal growth, and everything in between. We dive deep into the human experience, and I'm here to narrate stories that resonate with all of you. After uncovering my wife's affair on vacation, I exacted brutal revenge, ruined our home, and left for good. I used to think we had it all, the kind of life you see in movie scenes, where everything falls perfectly into place. Sarah and I, along with our 2 kids, Max and Lily, lived in a charming suburban home, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. I was the kind of husband who always tried to do right by my family. I'd wake up early, help get the kids ready for school, and spend the evenings coaching Max's little league team or helping Lily with her homework. And Sarah, well, she was the glue that held everything together. Her laughter was the soundtrack of our home, and her smile, the highlight of every day. I'd always been proud of what we built together. Sarah was beautiful, smart, and warm, and we had so much history together. I could still remember the first time I saw her. She was at a coffee shop with a group of friends, and her energy was magnetic. I couldn't help but be drawn to her, not just her looks, but the way she made everyone feel at ease. I was a quiet, reserved guy back then, but Sarah brought something out of me. It was like we were made for each other. Over the years, our relationship grew deeper, and we built a life that I thought was foolproof. We laughed together, fought occasionally but always made up, and shared dreams about the future. Nothing seemed to threaten the foundation we had created. But as life continued, I started to notice small things that weren't quite right. Little cracks in our seemingly perfect life. At first, it was nothing I could really put my finger on. It was just a feeling, like a faint whisper in the back of my mind telling me that something wasn't as it seemed. Sarah had always been the type to keep a strong hold on everything, from the kids' schedules to the household chores. But recently, she seemed distracted. Her mind appeared to be elsewhere, even when we were sitting at the dinner table as a family. I'd come home from work to find her on the couch, her face glued to her phone, eyes darting nervously when I walked into the room. I tried to brush it off. Life gets busy, right? She probably just had a lot on her plate. But then, she started canceling plans. Things she used to look forward to, like a night out with our friends or a date night with me, suddenly became excuses to rest or catch up on work. There was also the way she'd become increasingly defensive when I asked about her day. In the past, we shared everything. But now, she was vague and distant. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd just say, "I'm fine," but there was no conviction in her voice. The tension between us grew. It wasn't anything overt, no big fights, no screaming matches, but it was there, like an unspoken barrier that neither of us could cross. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just stressed from work or worried about something at home. After all, we all go through rough patches, right? But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And that feeling would stay with me, gnawing at me, until I couldn't ignore it any longer. As the weeks went on, I couldn't deny the growing unease in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't like I could point to one specific moment when things began to shift, but it felt like the air between Sarah and me had grown heavy. Every conversation felt strained, like we were dancing around some invisible elephant in the room. At first, I thought it was just a phase. People go through tough times, right? But Sarah's behavior wasn't just a result of stress, it was something deeper. It was as if she was retreating into herself, building walls I couldn't climb over. She had always been open with me, so her sudden defensiveness left me questioning everything. When I'd ask about her day, the responses were short, "It was fine," or "just busy." Gone were the long chats about our dreams, our frustrations, or even what we were planning for the future. In their place was an emptiness. A cold distance. I remember the first time I really noticed it. She was standing in the kitchen, her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her thumb moving rapidly across the screen. I walked in, greeted her with a kiss, and tried to start a conversation about the kids' school projects. She barely looked up, only muttering, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." But her eyes were glued to her phone, her face tense, like she was avoiding me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It didn't stop there. I started noticing other little things, like how she'd suddenly leave the room if I came near when she was texting. Or how she'd be on her phone late into the night, with a look of concentration I hadn't seen before. If I asked her who she was talking to, the answers came quickly, but they didn't feel genuine. "Just work," she'd say. But something in her tone didn't match the words. It was too rehearsed, too guarded. As the days passed, I grew more suspicious. I wasn't the type to snoop, but the unease was eating away at me. It was like I could sense that something was being hidden, something I wasn't meant to know. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia. After all, we'd been married for years, and things couldn't possibly be falling apart so suddenly. Could they? But then came the nights she started canceling plans. First, it was a dinner with friends. Then a weekend getaway that we'd been planning for months. Each time, there was a new excuse. "I'm too tired. I need some time to myself. There's too much going on right now." I wanted to believe her, but with every cancellation, the pit in my stomach grew deeper. One evening, I decided to push. I asked her outright what was going on. She reassured me that everything was fine, a little too quickly, a little too desperately. Her eyes avoided mine, her fingers fidgeting with her glass. That's when I knew. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the missed plans or the coldness. It was the way she was looking at me, distant, like I was a stranger she was trying to tolerate. I had seen that look before, but never from her. The look of someone who had already checked out. I needed answers. I had to know what was really happening. I couldn't stand the uncertainty any longer. We'd planned the vacation months in advance, thinking it would be the perfect opportunity to reconnect. Sarah and I needed a break from the monotony of daily life, a chance to reignite the spark that once made us feel like we were the only two people in the world. I thought it was the answer to our growing distance, a peaceful week at a cabin in the mountains, just the two of us. But the moment we arrived, it was clear that something was off. The cabin was beautiful, tucked away in the trees, with a fireplace and a view that made everything seem so perfect. But even the serene surroundings couldn't mask the tension between us. The first evening, I tried to get things going the way we used to, a nice dinner, some quiet time by the fire. But Sarah seemed distracted. She barely touched her food, her eyes constantly flicking toward her phone. Every time she received a notification, she'd slip it into her pocket quickly, as if she didn't want me to see. It was subtle at first, but it didn't take long for me to realize it wasn't just a few quick texts. There was something more going on. I asked her what was wrong, but she brushed it off. "I'm just tired," she said, a little too quickly. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. That night, as I lay in bed next to her, I could feel her tension. I reached out to hold her hand, something we used to do without thinking, but she pulled away just slightly. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it. After all, we had been through tough patches before. This was just a temporary hiccup. But as the days passed, it became impossible to ignore. She would disappear into the other room, locking herself away with her phone. When I asked about it, she'd give me some excuse. "Just checking on some work stuff," she said. But I knew better. She wasn't working. She wasn't even really talking to anyone, not in a way that felt normal. She was hiding something. On the third night, things came to a head. I'd been growing more and more restless, my gut telling me that whatever was happening, it wasn't just a small issue. I needed to know. I needed to confront her. As she dozed off beside me, I quietly grabbed her phone from the bedside table, my hands shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. I knew I shouldn't be doing this. I had never been the kind of guy to invade someone's privacy, but my instincts were screaming at me. I unlocked the phone and scrolled through her messages. I hadn't gotten far before I saw it, her text conversations with Matt. My heart stopped. There was no mistaking it. The messages were flirtatious, intimate. As I scrolled through them, my stomach churned. She had been seeing Matt, her best friend's husband. The man she had once told me was just a friend. I could feel my whole world crumbling around me. The texts weren't just casual chats. They were filled with longing, with promises of secret meetings and affection. It was more than I could handle. I felt sick to my stomach, not just from the betrayal, but from the realization that I had been blind for so long. My mind raced. I wanted to scream, to confront her right there. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. I had to be calm, methodical. I needed to understand the full extent of her betrayal before I said anything. So, I put the phone back and lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. I didn't sleep a wink that night. The morning light was cruel, casting an unforgiving glow across the room. Sarah was still asleep beside me, unaware that everything had changed. I could barely breathe, the weight of the truth pressing down on my chest. How could she do this to me? How long had she been lying? My mind raced, the anger bubbling beneath the surface, but there was a strange calmness too. I knew I needed to confront her, but I had to do it right. I waited until she stirred, stretching beneath the covers. Her sleepy smile felt like a betrayal, a reminder of the life we once shared. As she reached for her phone, I couldn't hold back any longer. I was done with pretending I didn't know. I needed to hear it from her own lips. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper, but it was enough to wake her. Her head turned toward me, and her smile faded as she saw the look in my eyes. I didn't need to say more. The evidence was already there. I could see the fear in her eyes, the guilt she tried so hard to hide. "Is there something you want to tell me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though it trembled with emotion. She opened her mouth but paused, her breath hitching. She didn't answer right away, and I felt my heart race with dread. The silence hung between us like a thick fog. I sat up, leaning closer, my mind clouded with a mix of hurt and fury. "I know, Sarah," I said, my words sharp but controlled. "I know about you and Matt." Her face drained of color, and she looked away, unable to meet my eyes. It was the moment I had dreaded, the moment I knew I would never be able to take back. The moment I would never forgive. "Please, just let me explain," she whispered, her voice shaking as she pulled her knees to her chest. "It wasn't what you think." I could feel the bile rising in my throat, and I tried to keep my composure. "Explain." I repeated, my voice growing colder. "How do you explain this, Sarah? You've been lying to me for months. To my face. To my family. To our friends. And now you want to explain." She opened her mouth to speak, but the words failed her. She seemed to shrink under the weight of my gaze, her once confident posture now crumpled. She hadn't expected this. She thought she could keep hiding, keep lying, keep everything secret. But I wasn't blind anymore. "I don't want to hear your excuses," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I want to know why. Why him? Why lie to me? Why destroy everything we built?" She let out a shaky breath, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't answer immediately, but the silence between us felt suffocating. I wanted to scream, to throw the pain I was feeling back at her, but I couldn't. Instead, I stayed there, motionless, waiting for an answer that would never come. I don't know," she finally whispered, her voice breaking. "I just felt lost. I don't know when it happened, but one thing led to another, and I didn't know how to stop." My chest tightened as I processed her words. She was confessing, but it didn't make the pain any easier. It was as though she had taken a piece of my soul and crushed it beneath her hands. I could feel my anger rising again, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let her see me lose control. Not now. Not when everything was already falling apart. "Why didn't you tell me, Sarah?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you try to fix things with me before this?" She collapsed into tears, burying her face in her hands, unable to answer. It was too late for explanations. Too late for apologies. The damage had been done. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice low but firm. "I need space. I can't do this anymore." And with those words, I knew I had made the hardest decision of my life. My marriage, everything I thought I knew about us, was over. The air in the cabin felt like it was closing in on me. The quiet was deafening. Sarah's sobs filled the space between us, but they did nothing to erase the rawness of what had just happened. She begged me to understand, pleaded with me to give her a second chance. But I wasn't listening anymore. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no going back. I stood there, watching her crumble, but inside, I felt nothing. My mind was numb, but my heart was full of anger and betrayal. I couldn't look at her without seeing the lies, all the moments we had shared, all the promises she had broken. I was no longer the man she had known. I was someone different, someone shattered by her deceit. "I need to go," I said, my voice eerily calm. I grabbed my bag from the corner of the room and started packing in silence, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. Every movement felt like it was happening in slow motion, but I couldn't seem to move fast enough. I just wanted to leave. Sarah's cries grew louder as she reached out for me. "Don't go, please. We can fix this. We can make it right, I swear." She moved toward me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. Her words felt like poison now, hollow and meaningless. "How can you say that?" I asked, the bitterness rising in my throat. "How can you expect me to just forgive you? After everything?" She flinched at my words, but I didn't care. "I don't know what I was thinking," she continued, her voice breaking. "It was a mistake. I was confused. You have to believe me, it didn't mean anything." A laugh escaped my lips, but there was no humor in it. "A mistake? You don't just mistake an affair. You don't mistake betrayal, Sarah." My voice was getting louder now, the hurt in my chest threatening to burst. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been lying to everyone we know. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done?" She stood there, crying, her hands trembling as she reached for me again. "Please don't leave me like this. I love you. I never wanted to hurt you." But the words were empty. The love I once thought we shared had turned into a shell, hollow and broken. The man she loved, the man she once said she couldn't live without, was gone. He was replaced by a stranger, a man who couldn't trust her anymore, a man who felt nothing but betrayal. I couldn't stay. I needed to escape, from her, from the lies, from everything. The cabin, the memories, the dreams of our future together. They were all tainted now, stained with her deceit. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I need space, Sarah. I need time to figure this out." With that, I turned and walked out the door. I didn't look back. The drive home was a blur. My mind raced, but I couldn't focus on anything. I wasn't sure where I was going or what I was doing. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I couldn't face her. Not now. Not like this. The truth was, I felt lost. I had built my whole life around her, around us, and now it was all gone. The home we had shared, the family we had built, it felt like a dream I had woken up from, only to find it all shattered. It was only when I reached our house that I realized how much had truly changed. It wasn't just a physical space. It was a place full of memories, memories that no longer felt safe. I had to leave. I had to walk away. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one blurring into the next with the same gnawing pain that refused to subside. I moved back into the house, but it wasn't really home anymore. It was just a place I stayed, a temporary refuge from the wreckage of my life. The house felt too big, too empty without Sarah there. The silence echoed louder than I could bear, and every room seemed to hold a ghost of the life we'd shared. I didn't know where to begin. The shock of everything had left me numb. There was anger, of course, so much anger that I could feel it consuming me. But there was also a strange sense of relief. As soon as I walked out of that cabin, the weight I'd been carrying for so long seemed to lift, if only slightly. The facade had crumbled, and I was no longer bound to the illusion of what I thought my life was. But at the same time, I felt lost, like a part of me had been stolen and I didn't know how to fill the void. Sarah reached out countless times in the days that followed. Texts, calls, emails, each one more desperate than the last. She begged me to talk, to listen, to understand. She sent messages full of apologies, saying she was sorry, that she made a huge mistake, that she still loved me. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Every word she sent felt like another lie, another reminder of how far gone we were. I talked to a lawyer. I started the process of separating our finances, dividing the assets. It was cold, clinical, but necessary. The legal side of things felt easier than the emotional side. The paperwork, the meetings, the phone calls, they were all steps toward moving forward, even if I wasn't sure where I was going yet. Max and Lily were the hardest part of all. They didn't know the details, they were too young to understand why Mom and Dad weren't living together anymore. All they knew was that something had changed. They asked questions I wasn't ready to answer, and it broke me every time. They missed Sarah, of course. They missed the way things used to be. But they also saw the sadness in my eyes, the way I had retreated into myself, and they asked if I was okay. And I wasn't. I spent the first few weeks of our separation in a haze. I spent time with the kids when I could, trying to hold on to the parts of my life that still felt real. I started running again, something I hadn't done in years. It helped clear my head, even if just for a moment. There were days when I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, if leaving Sarah was the right call. But every time I thought about going back, I saw the betrayal again. The lies, the hurt, the way she had looked at me when I asked her why. I couldn't unsee it. The worst part was knowing that I would never fully trust again. I would never look at someone the same way, would never believe that love was simple or pure. The innocence of it had been shattered. But with time, I began to understand that healing would take time too. I couldn't rush it. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to know exactly what my future held. All I needed was to take it day by day, step by step, and rebuild. And so, I moved forward. I let go of what was broken and focused on the parts of my life that were still intact. I learned that in the face of betrayal, you don't just lose everything. You find new strength, even in the darkest moments. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. And remember, no matter what you're facing, you're not alone. Stay strong, and take things one step at a time.